It's 4 o'clock. So welcome to the Murray City Municipal Council Committee of the Whole. And to begin with, I have a statement to read. Everyone's probably familiar with, but we'll do it again. It says, public notice is hereby given that this meeting will occur electronically without an anchor location in accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2044 or 2074 due to infectious disease COVID-19 novel coronavirus. The council chair has determined that conducting a meeting with an anchor location presents substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location because physical distancing measures may be difficult to maintain in the Murray City Council chambers. All right, so we have quite a large agenda for the Committee of the Whole, and at this point, I think we have all council members present. Rosalba and Brett are via Zoom. So, and Kat, Dale, and myself are here, and welcome. So let's get going. First of all is the approval of the minutes for the general plan workshop for March 18th, 2021. Are there any changes, additions to those minutes? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll move
that we approve the general plan workshop meetings on March 18th, 2021.
I'll second.
All right. We have the motion from Brett and we have the second from Kat. So we'll continue on. Oh, all in favor. Just say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Okay, none opposed, so it passes. Let's start with the first discussion item, which has been long in coming, and we're really looking forward to it. I know Kat said she was really looking forward to it. We have the 2021 legislature report with GL, Dave Stewart, Corey Holdaway, and Kadeen Daly. So you guys have 30 minutes.
Thank you. I want to start off first by thanking these three gentlemen for helping us, being our eyes and ears at the legislature this year. David Stewart, Corey Holdaway, and Kadeen Daly. And I'd like to start with Kadeen. Kadeen was our intern this year and did a fabulous job. I hope you can appreciate that when you look at legislative items, you're looking at snippets of statutes, and it's hard sometimes to get the context of what a bill really is getting to. Kadeen did a great job, had some good insight, and really was a good communicator of what was in our legislation this year. So what I'd like to do is start with you, Kadeen. If you wouldn't mind letting the council just give them kind of an overview of what it was you did for the city, what you learned, your impressions of being up close and personal with the legislature, and whether you enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. So I guess I'll just start off here by saying thank you, GL, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, everybody here at Murray City, just for listening to me and hearing what I have to say today, but more so for giving me the opportunity to have or enjoy myself in the legislative session the way that I did. So I guess as kind of the day-to-day, what I would do is I would attend daily meetings for the Utah League of Cities and Towns. They would have briefings on bills that they were going to be keeping an eye on that day, things that were in committee, things that were going to be on the floor, or really just things in general that they had their eye on or were talking about, or whatever the case may be. And then sending summaries of those every day And then I would also attend a weekly meeting with the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Their legislative policy meeting happened on Mondays, and then summarize kind of the contents of those. Be similar stuff, just more in depth, kind of what to expect in the coming week, what happened in the previous week, a list of all the bills they were looking at, and, I guess just how they felt about those bills. And then I would summarize those meetings as well and send them through. I would coordinate a lot of Murray City with the League of Cities and Towns. So I guess if they ever had if Murray ever had things that they wanted to say, I could kind of be a liaison, and obviously vice versa. Then also did some communicating with some of the other interns that were up on the Hill with legislators and legislators themselves on certain bills or certain policy issues that were related to Murray City. So that was kind of the gist of what I guess I did every day. As far as I guess what I learned, one of the major things that stuck out to me was just kind of the level of knowledge that everybody had. I feel like whenever I had a question, it was always pretty much immediately answered. People just kind of knew what they were talking about, and knew that they had studied things and worked hard to get where they were at. And that's something that I really want to emulate in my future. Kind of hinted to me, I guess, that I need to ramp it up a little bit. So I'll definitely be, just putting in as much as I can and trying to bring my A game every day, like what I witnessed during that session. Another thing, kind of learned about the value of solid and accurate information. Just a lot of what I witnessed, if people would kind of come through with inaccurate information or whatever the case may be, they would just get checked very quickly. So it's just really important to cover all your bases, kind of like I said there, and make sure you are one of the people who know what you're talking about, like a lot of what I witnessed. And kind of taught me how to find good information, going straight to the source, like where a lot of these people get their statistics, going to the legislative website, and you can kind of listen to testimony and get a lot of information on things that you want to learn more about, which is a good thing. And then one thing was kind of the value of negotiation. So I got to watch pretty closely, Corey and GL work with legislators, to watch Cameron Deal of the Utah League of Cities and Towns work with legislators a lot, and just kind of seeing the dedication that people had, on this end from city government, and on the other end, whether it be some bills like stuff with housing or building regulations or whatever the case may be. Just kind of seeing people really be willing to come to the table and talk and find a solution to the issues was really a cool thing to see, because I feel like you don't see that very often. You don't hear about it very often. Just kind of hear about people digging their heels in. So it's really cool to see just how well people worked with each other, I guess. And then I feel like another really big thing I learned was how, to me at least, surprisingly easy it was for an individual person to influence the legislative process. I was just kind of shocked that, all you really have to do is send an email to a legislator, or you can testify in a committee meeting or whatever the case may be. But I guess the lesson being that we should all use our voices more. We should all be a lot more involved. I know the conversation is a lot around voting right now, which, is very important and definitely needs to be talked about. But to me, that should almost be the bare minimum. And there should be tons and tons of people just sending a quick email or, taking 5 minutes to testify about something that they care about, because I don't think a lot of people realize, and I know I didn't realize at first, how much of an impact that kind of stuff actually has. And kind of as far as impressions of the process goes, I would kind of echo a lot of the same things I just said, and add to that, like the role of state and local governments and how big of an impact they actually have on your everyday life. Again, I feel like a lot of the stuff you hear about is related to national news, or whatever the case may be. You don't hear a lot about local government, and you don't hear a lot about state government, but from what I gathered, at least, they have, a significant, if not like the most impact on your day-to-day life. And, it's the kind of thing where it's right down the street and you can go and voice a concern. But not many people think about that. A lot of people think about national government probably, and it feels kind of out of touch to be able to get there. So I think just the value of local government was, I guess state and local government was really interesting to see to me, and really kind of opened my eyes. I think when I was first thinking of careers, you kind of think of what you see a lot, and I was seeing national stuff, so that's what was in the back of my mind. But I feel like now I would really hope to be at a lower level like state or local government, and trying to kind of influence policy in that way, as opposed to national government. And then finally, whether or not I enjoyed my involvement, short answer is very, very much so. Like I said, kind of barely, I had an idea of what I wanted to do before this. I wanted to go into law and have some kind of influence on public policy, but honestly had no idea on how I was going to go about it. So this experience really showed me kind of exactly where I want to be when I eventually graduate law school. I hope that I can kind of come back here and be involved in that policy area, public policy area, and influencing or drafting or whatever the case may be. And I have a better idea now of organizations I can reach out to see if they're looking for help. So this experience really made me excited for the future in a way that I haven't really been in the past. And it's a pretty indescribable feeling to kind of finally see that clear path forward, thanks in large part to this experience. I spent a lot of time kind of being unsure about what I want to do, like a lot of people, and now I can really see a path towards what I want to do, which is kind of life-changing in a sense, and then, yes, the last thing that I want to touch on is just how much Corey and GL and everybody involved, we worked a lot with Audrey Wood as well, made me feel like, I was part of the team. They did a great job of communicating with me, always being available to answer my questions, kind of giving me clear instructions on what they wanted me to do at a certain time. And they always made themselves available to answer questions. Sorry, I don't know if I just said that. But yeah, they really made me feel like I belonged and like I was part of the team, and gave me a good structure. So, I stayed busy and felt like I was really giving a significant contribution to what them and everybody here at Mercy City were trying to accomplish. And just last thing is, I just want to say it was definitely the most valuable thing that I think that I've done in my life so far. Just kind of thinking about what to do in the meantime between like now and law school and stuff. It almost bums me out a little bit to think about working in an area that doesn't have to do with the kind of stuff that I was working with during the legislative session. So I really hope that I can get back there someday soon. That's definitely the end goal, and the opportunity that was provided to me by everybody here was definitely a huge driver in what I want to do with my future. So, again, thank you everybody for the opportunity to work with GL and Corey and the others at Murray City during the legislative session. I had a blast, and thank you for taking the time today to let me talk about my experience and how much fun I had and how much I gained from it.
Caden, thank you very much. Let's go to David. David, if I think those of you on the council, Kat and Russell, you may not know David as well. David's one of our lobbyists, and we appreciate the insight he brings and what Corey brings. But I want to start with David and ask you if you would kind of give the council an overview or a 30,000-foot view of what the legislature did this year, what their concerns were that they were addressing, and if you could also talk the transportation and infrastructure bills that were passed, I'd appreciate that.
Sure, GL, happy to do that. See, I'll try and sum it up quickly. The legislature, as many other past legislatures, education was obviously a big focus. There was this year a record amount of money put towards education for different priorities and projects and funding of the WPU. There had been some commitments made to a ballot initiative or a ballot measure last year that opened up the earmark of funding from only to income taxes used to only fund education. That got broadened out to be able to fund some other things in social services. And as part of that deal, they then pledged to fully fund the WPU and to kind of broaden the funding mechanism for education, which they lived up to this last session. This last session, it's been kind of building. I think Corey would agree, and I'm sure you guys, over the last few years, but this year more than even in the last couple seemed to be a very large focus on local government. And, candidly, somewhat of an attack on local government, where before we've always had a few bills here and there, and generally been for more of the general membership, but this seemed to be much more members of leadership seem to have a keen interest in some key bills that, I know, especially Cameron Deal from the League was spending all session going from one fire to the next, trying to work through and sometimes multiple bills. For instance, billboards had two major bills that we're trying to negotiate. Also dealing with ADUs and dealing with building inspectors and things like that. And, the list goes on and on. But this year, more than any other year, seemed to be a fairly large assault. And I think by and large, the league did very well. I had a front row seat especially for billboards, Senate Bill 61, primarily because of my relationship with the sponsor, Senator Scott Sandel. He's from up in Box Elder. He's one that I helped actually encourage to, switch from the House and run for the Senate. And so worked closely with him. And in the end, that, bill was then got to the best point in trying to negotiate. Was still a bill that the league and we didn't like, and worked the floor, and that bill ultimately failed. But the message was kind of clear to local governments: hey, figure out where there are some outdoor advertising billboards that can convert to digital, and where that makes sense, on freeways and places in industrial areas that really don't have an impact on constituents and on people and aren't so much a nuisance to try, and candidly, some cities, Salt Lake being one, and some others that have, I guess, historically had difficulty working, that was kind of a bill aimed at them. Unfortunately, anytime you try to go after a certain city or anything else, you affect everybody else. And so we were getting locked into the middle of a bad policy from a state perspective that had a lot of unintended consequences. And I think that's what finally proved out and defeated the bill, is there wasn't a way to really kind of get with a scalpel from a state level, address the need. And so what they were ending up doing is causing problems from Provo to St. George to Murray, up through Davis County, Weber County, and so it just kind of finally fell under its own weight. And then Gio mentioned, and I'll touch on a couple others, a bill that specifically affected Murray was House Bill 244. It was a infrastructure bill. It's for those of you who are aware of the term, the quarter of the quarter, which is some county tax that is one of the quarter cents that's authorized that the state, when it was imposed, withheld and is prioritized by the state and has to be spent in Salt Lake County. Early on in the session, a couple senators and a couple of House members got together and decided that they wanted to spend some of that money on a few of the cities that they represented, which, makes a lot of sense. And so they introduced a bill that gave some money to Salt Lake City, Sandy City, Taylorsville, South Jordan, I think, and maybe one other. That obviously raised the concern of Murray City that we weren't on the list. And so, and met with the sponsor and members of leadership and others, and were able to work through and help prioritize additional money. And so the initial draft came out with Murray City getting $400,000 a year for the next 15 years. As we worked closely with UDOT through the process, we were able to identify some additional money. And so we were one of the few cities that actually got an increase. We raised the 400 up to 500,000 ongoing. And again, for 15 years, so we can bond against that or do whatever we want. There was another 500,000 one time that was put in there with a priority for a project potential in Murray if it worked out at our discretion. And if we didn't see that project had merit, then certainly that money was to be used however we wanted. But if that project were a priority of the city, that money was to help kind of facilitate. They had been told, some policymakers, that that was an issue that they were trying to address, but certainly wasn't tying the hands of the city, and so the city can use that. So all in all, I think like I say, $500,000 for 15 years and $500,000 one time in addition to try and address some needs at the city level with different roads and projects. And then just broadly, it won't necessarily directly affect Murray City, but there was a broader infrastructure bill that authorized some bonding of the final number. I want to say it was around a little over $1 billion of bonds. Almost another $1 billion worth of cash was put towards different infrastructure projects, some of those being double tracking of commuter rail, largely in Davis and Weaver counties and into Salt Lake County, a bunch of other priority projects around the state, moving some of those up, as well as putting a lot of money into trails and state parks and things to try and bring some of those facilities more up to standard, and then a bunch of other infrastructure that goes on and on. But largely, it's interesting as we look at certainly at a state level, at other states that are struggling and have been really hit hard, as certainly we have by the coronavirus, but coming out of it, we have been poised very well, and the economy is very strong, and where we're able to make investments in our state, where other states are just trying to plug holes and keep afloat. And so certainly I commend the legislature, kind of looping back to GL's original thing about the focus. The legislature's focus this year was really was trying to identify, how do we continue to move forward? How do we recognize, the need and balance that of health and safety, but also the economy and the well-being of the state of Utah for the next 10 years? And how do we set ourselves up to be very successful? And then kind of on the heels of that, with the new stimulus money that's coming, roughly $1.5 billion to the state. There's money directly, obviously, to Murray and to other local jurisdictions. And so there are discussions now ongoing of how best to spend that. Right now, my understanding is about half of that's available to the state, and another 18 months will be the other half. There are a few strings attached. And so the current talk is around May 18th, the May interim will likely be when they'll have that special session to start to prioritize some of that funding. One thing that is being kicked around, or that I've heard about and been in some discussions with, is potentially some sort of a fund that the state would set aside some money and allow local jurisdictions to use some of the money they're getting directly to match with that under certain types of projects that the state is trying to incentivize investments to continue to grow the state, to grow for tourism, to grow for economic development, all these other kind of functions. And so we'll see if that comes to fruition, but that's something that they're trying to incentivize certain types of investment to bring more dollars from the state into the local jurisdictions for projects and things that are transformational or helpful as we continue to kind of climb out of this pandemic and continue to get back to normal or new normal or whatever we want to call it. But that, GL, is kind of a quick overview. I don't want to take, Corey's got much. I know he's going to touch on some of the key other items, but that's kind of certainly happy to answer any questions, but hopefully that addresses what you were looking for.
Perfect. That was perfect. Thank you. Let's go to Corey. And Corey, if you kind of do the same thing, give us your take on this legislative session and maybe highlight a couple of the areas that you thought were given some emphasis by the legislature that will affect Murray City.
Thank you, GL, for the opportunity to address the council. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity of being able to work with Dave and with Caden and with you directly. I think, as Dave indicated, this session was unlike any other session. I've been doing this. In fact, this is my 21st legislative session in one form or fashion, and this session was different than any other, obviously due to the pandemic and the types of meetings that were held and the like. There were blessings and there were curses related to that. I would say the blessing of it was we had, I think, a greater degree of public involvement, at least remotely. The curse was we didn't have the personal contact as frequently as we have in the past with legislative leaders because of the challenges with meeting in person. But we were able to adjust, and I think and at the end of the day, the messages that needed to be shared were shared. I also want to tip my hat to the League of Cities and Towns. The League does a phenomenal job representing the interests of the cities across the state. And I think we've got a kind of a special place in the League's landing, and in that Cameron's a former Murrayite. So I think anytime we have an issue and we go to Cameron, Murray has a special place in his kind of work, and I have always appreciated that with him. Not that he favors us all directly, but you tend to pay a little more attention to where you come from. So anyway, I just want to make those points. Couple of bills I want to just bring up to you. One has to do with a bill that passed that was ultimately vetoed. It's House Bill 98. This is the bill, Local Government Building Regulation Amendments. This was carried by Representative Paul Ray. And the way this bill came about was a builder's bill to go after timeframes and inspections and the like that some of the builders were having challenges with in some of the cities. It reduced time frames in many cases. It was ultimately vetoed, but it is due to come back, I'm told, in a special session. The governor didn't veto it because of he was necessarily opposed to it. He vetoed it because of the challenges that it created with regard to potential funding from FEMA and from flood insurance coverage that cities pay into. So I suspect, as Dave indicated, that May is what I'm hearing is when the special session, and they typically try to hold these special sessions around interim days, if not on interim day. I think that will be likely a topic of discussion. I've had conversations with Representative Ray since the session, and he's been told that it's going to be coming back with the fixes necessary to avoid the challenges with the funding for FEMA and the flood insurance. So the one thing I would say to the city related to that, the timeframes and the things that are contained in that are likely going to be something that we're going to have to deal with in terms of inspections and the like, which largely compressed those inspections and made it a little more challenging, I think, for your individual departments. So that would be one thing I would just raise for the city. The other bill I want to just throw out there is House Bill 82. It's the Single Family Housing Modifications Bill by Representative Ward. This was the internal accessory dwelling unit bill. This came out early in the session. It's House Bill 82, as I said, and when the way it came out and the way it ended were significantly different. Representative Ward wanted to allow internal accessory dwelling units, basically in any kind of a home that had a basement that you could convert, and the city was going to be required to approve that. At the end of the day, there were some exceptions that are going to be part of what the city's going to need to deal with this. It modifies the building code to exempt internal accessory dwelling units in certain cases. It also establishes a loan program for the dwelling units, and it basically bans homeowner associations from banning internal accessory dwelling units, and then various requirements accordingly. That bill ultimately passed, but it was in a much better place than where it started, largely due to the work of the lobby that was done by the individual cities across the state. And then, of course, Dave mentioned the other bills as far as transportation and the like. Those are the two main bills that I wanted to throw out to you in terms of just, I think, bills that are going to affect the day-to-day within Murray City. With that, I know we've taken more than our time that was allotted. I'll hand it back to GL. Before I do, I just want to say we had a great intern. Caden was awesome. He did a great job, and I feel bad because he didn't get the full measure of what a session was like, given the type of session that we had. And then again, I appreciate working with Dave and GL. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all three for being here tonight. We're right at about the 30-minute mark. We're available for questions if you have them. I am, as well as you can get the lobbyists if you have some questions now or in the future. We're happy to answer those questions.
Thank you, GL. Okay, questions? Short questions? Comments? Rosal,
this is Brett. I'll just give a big thanks to you, to all of you. I mean, you were wonderful. It was a huge session, and anyway, just a big thanks from me. So thank you.
All right. I would also like to thank Caden for the synopsis that you did each week for us. It was really helpful, and I appreciate having it. It was pretty much for lay people, and it was really helpful for me because I could understand it. And so thanks again, Caden, and thanks for the work you do, Dave and Corey, and also GL. You guys are wonderful, and we really appreciate you, and we need you up there. That's for darn sure. So anyway, thanks again, and take care. And now we'll go on to number 2, which is a discussion on a resolution consenting to the reorganization of the Wasatch Front and Recycling District, also called Wooford, as a local district. And let's see, I'm on the board of Wooford, and so Pam, who is our executive director, is here to kind of explain what this process is and why it would be a good thing and why it would be good for Wooford and Murray City. So Pam?
Yeah, thank you. I'm hoping that you can hear me this time. I know in December I had a little trouble, so I'm seeing heads nod, so that makes me feel good.
Yeah,
that's there. Good. Oops, sorry. Good to see you all again. And this topic is one that I have some history with and some institutional knowledge that I can share with you just to start off as an intro. Wooford is currently a special service district, and we were created under the Salt Lake County council, and originally the commissioners served on the board of trustees for the district. And then the sanitation division provided services for the entire unincorporated county back in 1977 is when the district was created. And then, as you know, over time, municipalities incorporated, and all of the municipalities stayed within the district, including the annexed properties in Murray City, the 2,800 homes that we service. And then Sandy City also has some annexed properties that we service for them. Otherwise, all of the other municipalities, including the town of Brighton, are all in whole with us, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So at any rate, we have 14 municipalities, which include the unincorporated Salt Lake County. So over time, the county council, of course, was created. They assumed the authority of the board of trustees. And then, as I mentioned, the city started to incorporate, and the big four originally were Taylorsville, Harriman, Holiday, and Cottonwood Heights. And they wanted more say in services. And so they really lobbied the county council to create an administrative control board. And it was the late, great Randy Horiuchi who spearheaded the project. And basically, the county council launched the administrative control board. And originally, Murray City didn't have a seat on that board. It remained with 5 county council members, and then 4 of the municipalities had one elected official representing them. And then basically the board had governing authority over everything except for personnel. And there was budget limitations because everything had to be passed through the Salt Lake County Council to, add any personnel. For example, when we went to weekly recycling, we needed to increase our personnel and our side load trucks. So that had to be through the county council to make that happen. So eventually the municipalities wanted to really have more say, more control. And then that's what really launched and was the catalyst for us to separate in January 1 of 13. So all personnel transferred from county employment to district employment, which it sounds so easy, but I can tell you that there were many steps along the way to reassure employees that we were going to be solid and solvent. And as you may recall, former council member Jim Brass then came on our board in 2013. The county seats went down to 4 and the cities had 5. Eventually, the evolution was that Sandy City came on board, I believe it was 2016. And then eventually the 5 metros and Mill Creek City, when they incorporated, came on in 17, and the board grew. And the county seats then went down to 2. And so over time, the county council has drawn down their number of seats on the board and turned over more and more control to the local governments. And in all honesty, all of the residents that are in the district, the majority of the board members live in the district. I think there's only a few that may not. But at any rate, that's kind of the long and short. I do have an executive summary that our wonderful legal counsel put together. I'm going to pull it up if I can. Let's see, share. I hope this works. And then can you see that executive summary? Let me blow it up a little bit. Our legal counsel is Rachel Anderson. She couldn't be here tonight, so if there's any really nitty-gritty legal questions that you have, if myself or GL aren't able to answer them, then Rachel and I can come back if this is something that you desire and would entertain to eventually adopt a resolution to allow this reorganization. So what Rachel put together here is basically an outline of the differences between a local district and a special district. Basically with special districts, which is what we are now, we're created under 17D of the state statute. Just so you know, as a special district, we also have to follow all of the local district statutes as well. So for me, and this just makes it more efficient with less bureaucratic steps, so to speak, that we have to to go through to operate under statutes, but it will still, don't get me wrong, I mean, we'll still be very compliant with everything we need to do. With local districts, it's a completely separate entity. Right now with the special district, we still have a tie to Salt Lake County. And so that's what we're looking at, is just basically separating totally and becoming an independent, totally independent organization. And the main differences that a lot of the councils have been asking are, you know, what does that mean? Well, right now we cannot levy a tax. Well, we can levy taxes, but we have to have the county do that on our behalf. If we're a local district, we have that authority, although I don't anticipate that we will ever levy a tax. We're a fee for service organization and we function on cash. We are also debt-free, which I'm very thankful for. The other con about taxing is that we have to wait till the end of the year to receive our revenues. And I know when we used to be under the county, we had a separate fee on the property tax notice. So we did have a delay in our funding. You know, and when we first separated, we were originally planning to be on that property tax notice again, but we wondered, and we were doing cash forecasting to wonder and answer the question of, would we have to take out loans to get us to the end of the year before we got our revenues in? So I guess, you know, we were lucky in a way that we got the billing handed to us on our way out, that this was an administrative function for us to take on. I can say that now because we lived through 2013 with all the residents really wondering what happened, and the phone's not, you know, continually ringing off the hook with confused folks. Anyway, that's the long and short of the tax. The other thing is we have to go back before the county council and ask permission to basically for the board composition. For example, for the 5 metros and Mill Creek City, we had to go back and ask the county council to allow them to have a seat on the board. That will change. The Administrative Control Board will have total authority of the board composition. And what our legal counsel is recommending is that we are an improvement district, which will allow our board composition to be as it is now. But the only difference would be that the county would go down to 1 seat versus the option of having 2. So that would be a big difference there. The process, if there's no questions on that piece, or if there are, we can go back to it. But let me just scroll down a little bit here. The process to reorganize, and why I'm here tonight and this discussion is happening, is that each of the municipalities need to sign off on accepting this change. And it's kind of a chicken and an egg. Should we have the county do this first? Should the municipalities do this first as far as adopting resolutions? Our legal counsel has basically said it's up to you as a municipality if you want to do it before the county does theirs, just to show that you're on board with this, or if you want to wait till they adopt the intent of resolution, that would be up to you. I can tell you that we have 10 municipalities that have adopted a resolution, mainly just to show that they are on board and help the county in understanding their willingness to have this happen. I think that's the long and short of it. Diane, did I miss anything?
No, I think that was great. I'm very supportive of this. I think it makes a lot of sense not to have all that red tape to have to deal with. GL also did a resolution, which is a resolution of the City Council of Murray City consenting to the reorganization of the Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District as a local district. So, GL, do you have anything to add? I think makes sense. I think it's a good idea. I got you right in mid-drink.
No, that's okay. I really don't have anything to add. I think if you look at the resolution and you look at the legal counsel's memo, whatever she included there, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, I
what
think
happens and how it's supposed to happen and why.
I think it is too. So I think it would be a good idea if we went ahead and voted on this on our next council meeting, and so then they can go forward. And Jim Bradley, who is on the Salt Lake County Council, is also on our board. He said he didn't think that there would be, any issues, any problems with it, but he was going to present it. So I think it would be helpful if we also have this and let them know that we are supportive of it. So anyway, are there any questions for Pam?
No, but I agree with you. I think we should move it on to the council.
Okay.
I agree with that. And great job, Pam.
Pam
Thank
always
you very
does
much.
a great
It's a
job.
lot to cover.
Yes, you did great, and thank you so much. Are
Thank
there,
you.
Rosalba, you have any questions, Kat? Okay, well, good. Hopefully it makes sense, and then we'll have it on our next council meeting. Thanks, Pam. Always good to see you.
Thank you
and
so much.
chat.
Good to see you too. We'll see you on the 26th.
Okay,
Council
take
member
care.
Turner. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Now we're on number 3, which is the presentation on the Seven Canyons Greenways plan. Kyle Amalfa. Is he on there?
Hi,
Jim?
everyone.
Kyle, are you there?
Yeah. Oh, let's see here.
There you are.
How's that?
That's good. So you have a report for us.
Yes. I sent it in. I wondered if you could present it. I can present it, but since I'm hoping Brian, we're a little early, and I'm worried that Brian Tonetti, our executive director, isn't right here yet. He's
not
going to
on.
be the main lead of the presentation. But I can get us started
Okay.
and talk a little bit about Seven Canyons Trust. 1 second here, and I'll be able to pull up our presentation. Yeah, let's see. And thanks everyone for your patience. It's really an honor to be here in front of the Maurice City Council. The genesis of this idea came from a meeting of the Council of Governments, and the Council of Governments supported a motion to request the Wasatch Front Regional Council or application for a grant to the Wasatch Front Regional Council for planning. And that's sort of what's behind this this topic that we're here to talk to you about today. So, let's see. And try to view a little screen here. Let's see if that'll have to do. And I want to give you a little background about the Seven Canyons Trust. We are a nonprofit. We have one employee and a couple of interns. We've been around for a few years with the goal of, over the course of the next 100 years, rehabilitating the Seven Canyons of the Wasatch Front, meaning City Creek, from City Creek all the way down to Little Cottonwood Canyon, bringing them out of the pipes, some places they're buried, and restoring them to healthy creeks and healthy rivers. And with this plan, healthy ways for people to get around throughout the county. We have a couple of signature projects. Our big one, which is opening in just a few weeks, is the Three Creeks Confluence. It started out as basically a parking lot and a box culvert that opened up into the Jordan River. It was used as a parking lot for an auto repair shop. And after some planning and a lot of public process, we've helped to find the funding and between the partners of Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, and others to turn it into a beautiful place to be with a fishing pier and a boat put in. It's going to have a little plaza over here and another bridge that connects to the Jordan River Parkway. So again, this is like one of our plans. Another one we're working on has to do with the Folsom Corridor, which is to daylight City Creek Canyon in Salt Lake City. So again, we're a group of former elected officials, former city officials. Jeff Niemeyer is our vice chair, and he's the former public utilities director for Salt Lake City. And we're on a 100-year plan to get this done, and we're about 5 years into it. And so with that, I would like to turn the time over to Brian Tonetti, our executive director, who's going to talk about the current iteration of the 7 Greenways Vision Plan, which thanks to the participation and the vision of those on the Murray City Council, as well as the other cities who touch these creeks, as well as the county. But thanks to all of you who share this vision to bring more better waterways back to the valley. So go ahead, Brian. You can take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Brian Tonetti, Executive Director of the Seven Kingdoms Trust. Thanks for that intro, Kyle. So the 7 Greenways Vision Plan is an effort to essentially capture the collective imagination in the creation of greenway corridors along our 7 major waterways flowing out of the Wasatch Range here in Salt Lake County. So a greenway is essentially a linear corridor, typically located adjacent to a stream, including kind of the adjacent land. And they're often used to enhance bicycle and pedestrian access, generate economic activity, increase resiliency to flooding, treat stormwater through restoration and daylighting, and provide valuable habitat for wildlife. So if we could go to the next slide. Here is a look at the scope of the plan. So these are the 7 waterways, and those most important to you guys would be Big and Little Cottonwood Creeks, kind of on the south end of our scope area. So the plan will essentially highlight opportunity areas in each of these 7 greenways, recommend best management practices, policies for implementation, and essentially create a toolbox of different design concepts and guidelines for these greenways. And a little background on the 7 Greenways Vision Plan effort. We received a Wasatch Front Regional Council Transportation and Land Use Connection Program grant last year for about $135,000. And all 8 of the municipalities and Salt Lake County all provided matching support and a letter of support for the project, which we were really excited about because this kind of means that each of these municipalities in Salt Lake County are essentially kind of buying into the vision and are all involved in the creation of this vision. So if we could go to the next slide, Kyle, thank you. The process started with kind of our first phase, which is the existing conditions phase. And we've just recently wrapped up existing conditions reports for each of the 5 core elements that we've identified, which include water, nature, recreation, community, and urban. And each of these core elements are actually on our website, which I can provide a link in the chat here. Let me do that quick. And that website is a really good resource to kind of stay up to date on the plan and definitely learn more about kind of what we're doing. But we're hopeful that these existing conditions reports can become a technical resource for you all to help help us perpetuate the plan. So with that, we're moving into our second phase. If we could advance the slide, Kyle, which is our community visioning phase. And this phase started with a community survey, a public survey, and 5 different focus groups based off of these core elements, where we asked both community members and technical experts to tell us about the restraints and opportunities within each of these municipalities, tell us best practices and potential kind of creative solutions for the creation of these greenway corridors. And next, we're planning to host what we're calling a vision workshop to kind of further gather feedback on goals, recommendations, and opportunity areas, which we're planning for, hopefully, tentatively speaking, June. And that'll definitely be a really good opportunity for both you all to join and share your thoughts, but also to share with your constituents, residents, family and friends, the opportunity to kind of help us guide the plan. And then the third phase is the actual creation of the 7 Greenways vision plan. And with that, we're planning on having kind of 2 volumes. So the first would be the vision plan itself, which will be kind of graphic heavy, really community facing, with the hope of kind of spawning excitement and support for the actual vision plan. And then the second volume would be basically an implementation plan, which will contain kind of all the technical information needed to advance the recommendations, opportunities, and potential funding sources for all of these hopefully great ideas. And then with that, I'd just like to end with kind of 3 ways that you can all help support the vision plan. So the first would be to just to stay involved throughout the process, including this vision workshop, this upcoming vision workshop. Share your feedback and visions in all of our engagement opportunities. And definitely the website is the best way to kind of stay up to date on what's going on. To share those engagement opportunities, to share the vision plan process and the project itself with your constituents, with residents, friends and family. And then third would be to actually help us implement the vision. So this process will offer us basically concepts and resources for the implementation of the plan. And we're hopeful that it will become part of your future general plans, parks and trails plans, economic and capital improvement plans, and potential future ordinances. So with that, Kyle and I can take some questions, thoughts, really anything.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions for Kyle or Brian regarding?
Thanks for the work you're doing. It's really exciting to think about. I mean, it's a long project, but I think that's wonderful. I just signed up for your newsletter so I can hear about your upcoming work, and just thanks for taking care of our streams and creeks.
Yes.
Thank you.
I agree. Any other comments? Okay. Well, thank you so much for the report. We really appreciate it. And so we'll talk to you soon again, I'm sure. How often will you provide these reports, Brian or Kyle?
However often you'd like us. Certainly when we wrap up the vision plan, I think it would be great to come back and just share, the final plan with you all, and certainly schedule meetings with staff to talk about how to perpetuate the plan. But we're happy to join, before then, truly however often you'd like us.
All right.
If I could just add,
Yes.
we are, there will be projects in here that are highlighted as signature projects from Murray. Ideas that came from your staff, from your constituents, and if you want to lean in on them, from you too. Also, so there will be money that will be needed to do that, and of course your budgeting processes are happening in a timely way. But also there are policy interventions that we think will be beneficial to the 100-year idea that our successors, many years from now, our grandchildren's grandchildren will appreciate policy interventions that will be coming as recommendations in the plan too.
All right, great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, take care. All right, let's go to the next, which is presentation from the Murray Area Chamber of Commerce, Skylar Galt. Skylar, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
And thank you so much, Diane.
Uh-huh.
So, again, I'm Skylar Galt. I'm the president with the Murray Area Chamber of Commerce. And so first off, I'd just like to thank everybody from the City Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to speak in front of you, and thank you for your continued support. Also, thank you, Mayor Cam. I appreciate all the work that you do, and I'm appreciative of that. Also, somebody that I'd like to thank, Melinda Greenwood, who I will never forget her last name again, because I forgot it at our last ribbon cutting, and she made me pay for it. And then thank you, Jennifer Kennedy, who's been a complete delight. So first off, I'd like to start off with the success of the chamber and kind of some of the stuff that we've already accomplished. We have a brand new office. So I feel like that was a great new start for us. We've got some new leadership along with a lot of new people on our board. We've got some fantastic new ambassadors, along with a brand new website. I didn't find our website very enthusiastic building at all. So I'm proud to launch our new website. So another success is our DEXA ribbon cutting. I think that they are a fantastic addition to the Murray Chamber. It's an opportunity for you to check your health. You can check your body fat. You can check your oxygen intake. But it's fantastic to have them as new members. Another new member that I'd like to thank is Youthlink. I had the pleasure of serving on a voting committee for them, where they were giving away $25,000 worth of scholarships to very deserving high school students and college students. So it was great to see it actually made me feel inadequate to know how much these kids were doing. So it was great to see and be a part of that process. They've also got a new building coming up in Murray, and so they're just trying to get some approval for that. And as soon as they do, they'll be moving forward with being a part of Murray rather than being part of Mill Creek. So other new memberships that we've got in the process, we've got Red Rock, we've got Home 2 Suites, where we're holding events at almost weekly. We've got Prohibition, we've got DEXA, Mimi's Cafe, Youthlink, Legacy Roofing. FMA Foundation is one I'd like to focus on. The FMA Foundation, they raise funds to help people that are dealing with suicide. So it's not that it's a huge problem, but it's something that's not ever fun for anyone. The head of that is Jen Keekel-Lynn. She's actually the chair of our nonprofit committee, and she does a lot of great work. I think we've got about, if I'm not mistaken, 53 members with the nonprofit committee. So I think it's great that we have that organized. We have that we're giving back to the community, and that Jen is leading that up. She does a great job. She is just nonstop going. So I'd actually like to turn this back a little bit, back to the city council. And I'd like to ask, is there anything that you're not receiving from the chamber? Because I feel like the core of the base of the city of Murray is local businesses, our local businesses. And I'd like to find out, is there somewhere within the chamber that you feel like, hey, look, you're dragging the ball here, you're not picking it up? How can we be better?
Let's see. I'll put that out to the council. I think you're doing a really good job, and we really do appreciate the growth that seems to be happening in the chamber. What other comments?
Yeah, if I might, I want to congratulate him as well. We have new leadership. We have excellent leadership in the chamber, and the chamber has no place to go but up, and it's headed that way. I'm proud to be a part of it, and I think they're doing a great, great job.
Kat,
Are there any challenges that you see as far as opening business back up? You know, we're trying to do our best to be cognizant of the challenges of being aware of the COVID challenges, but we're also trying to hit the ground running. And so, it's a double-edged sword there. Is there anything that we can do to support local businesses there, in your guys' opinion?
when you had your office opening, it was so nice to be able to attend. And so I know with COVID, it's really impacted our ability to attend some of those things. But I, for one, plan on getting out more and especially with vaccinations and things like that, I'll feel much more comfortable. What about you, Brett, Rosalba? You guys have any comments or any recommendations?
I don't have any recommendations, but a big thanks to Skylar. You're doing a great job. You're involving us. And now that, like Diane said, we're going to be able to have that opportunity to be able to participate and support a little more. So but thank you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing more of your guys' faces on less than a computer screen.
Yeah.
More in the face.
Yes, us too.
I have a question.
Sure.
How many members do you currently have with the chamber? And how many have you seen an increase now or with new leadership?
161, and that is 11 over last year after I took over in July last year.
Okay, so COVID really hasn't impacted the chamber in the sense it's just getting out in person has changed.
Well, it certainly impacted us, but I rolled with the punches, I feel, and have tried to retain as many of the old members as I can, along with as recruiting new members.
Awesome. And how many ribbon cuttings do you guys have coming up soon?
We've got 5 that are in the works.
Perfect. Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
We'd love to have you guys at any of those. I'm sorry that you couldn't be at the one on
I know.
Friday. I will be conscious of that moving forward.
No worries. Fridays are just a hard day for us, but I'm planning on joining soon. I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable being out in the world. So it's just going to take a little bit of time.
Okay.
I plan to be there, but thank you guys so much for everything that you guys are doing. It's nice to see the changes happening very gradually, but yes, very impactful. It's more accessible, I feel like, and that's always a good thing.
Yes, we try to be as respectful as we can with all the laws and the regulations and everything with COVID. And so, as long as we're adhering to the rules, we hope everybody feels comfortable coming out and going to events and opening up as gradually as possible, but with some respect.
Thank you.
And so in that note, some of the upcoming events that we do have going on that everybody can be a part of, that we are respectful of all the COVID rules and regulations, and we look at all the laws that come up. are that obviously the ribbon cuttings that Rosalba mentioned. We've also got Women in Business that happens every third Wednesday of the month. So right now we're holding it at Home 2 Suites. They've been very accommodating to us. They're actually a brand new member for us, and we're happy to have them. Also Mock. So that's our speed interviewing event that is held every third Wednesday of the month. Is also held at Home 2 Suites, and we're happy to have them accommodate us. A big one that we have that we'd like to get out there is our golf event that we're going to be able to have. It's going to be obviously outside. It's so their social distancing is less of a problem. It's going to be September 10th. We're going to hold it at the Murray Parkway Golf Course. So you can pre-register online. We have a lot of sponsors already. So if you have any ambitions to sponsor a hole or anything like that, we're running out of space. So it's actually, people are excited to open back up and have a good time. Also, our 4th of July parade. My idea for this year was that I wanted to have anybody that was interested. Obviously, it's not required, but if you're part of the Murray Chamber and you'd like to be a part of the 4th of July parade, I'd love to have a section of Murray Chamber members, a part of the 4th of July parade. So, we're going to have our own section. That way we can divide and conquer. Maybe we'll have some really big floats and blow everybody away with our insane floats for the year. Other than that, Eggs and Issues has opened back up. We're proud to have a lot of the city council members participate in that. So that happens every, second Friday of every month. And that's held at Mimi's Cafe. It's just off of 5300 South and State Street. And we usually have a fantastic speaker for it. Not that we don't have fantastic speakers, they're all fantastic speakers. We also have our gala coming up in September, and our Best of Salt Lake County. I apologize, I'm not trying to diss Murray, but I just want to include everyone. Salt Lake County, we're having a best of coming this August. So look forward to that. So another question that goes behind that, is there anything that you see that's happening within Murray? Because, when it comes to city council, I know you guys have a lot of support there, but we have 13 board members, we have 15 ambassadors, we have, endless ways to get, word out to get people out there on the streets and actually get people either to events or get people to local businesses. How do we best support local businesses, which are the bedrock of Murray?
Any ideas for Skylar?
I think the work you've done with getting information out there for grants has been really important, and I think that's something to continue to focus on whenever there's grants available to small businesses. Connecting our local businesses with resources is a crucial function, I think, as they rebound and come back. And I think that'll be big, but just continuing to be here and offer support and lets people know that there's still lots of shopping to do here in Murray.
Thanks, Scott.
Yes, any others? I think we're very happy to support you, and I think you're doing a really good job, and we appreciate it and keep it up, and whatever else we can do to support, we sure would like to.
Yeah, I'd like to also say the work you do in advertising on your website and other places for the new businesses as well as the existing businesses. It's important that people know that website and are able to see what's open, who are members, and get involved with the chamber. I think it's come a long ways in the last 6 or 8 months, and I think the sky's the limit. All of you are doing a great job.
Yeah, there seems to be a new enthusiasm, and that's so nice to see. and to hear, and I appreciate getting the information. So anyway, anything else?
No, I'd just like to thanks again to the council so much for their support, and the mayor and all those the supporting staff, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you, and I hope to eventually be able to meet you face to face.
We can't wait, believe me. All right, you take care, Skylar, and thanks again for your report.
Thanks,
we
guys.
really appreciate it. Okay. Now we are at number 5, which is discussion on a short-term rental ordinance. Melinda Greenwood. Hi, Melinda. Good to see you.
Now, hopefully everyone can hear me okay. We wanted to have a discussion with the city council about short-term rentals, and let's see, here we go. Am I sharing the screen? Okay, so we want to go through some information pretty quickly and then leave time for the council to have a bit of a discussion as to what you would like to see our next steps to be. So real quickly, we wanted to just be a little official and talk about what are short-term rentals. And the American Planners Association has a dictionary, and they have defined that as any dwelling or portion thereon that is available for use or is used for accommodations or lodging of guests paying a fee or other compensation for a period of less than 30 consecutive days. We've done a little bit of research, and thinking back, this topic first came to the city council probably about 1.5 years ago when we had a code enforcement case that came to us, and we approached the homeowner and let him know that short-term rentals were not legal in single-family residences in Murray. And he then came and spoke to the city council during Citizens to be Heard, and that kind of started a dialogue and efforts on our part to look at some options for short-term rentals. So one of the things that we did was I reached out to a company that I know does regulatory enforcement on behalf of cities who have short-term rentals. And we had a dialogue with them back in January, and the research that they did showed that we have 126 unique rental listings on short-term rental websites that are in Murray. So what that means is if you were to go into some of these short-term rental websites, you would see multiple listings, or one property may be cross-listed on multiple sites. So this identifies how many they think is unique. So this would be, in essence, their best guess is how many short-term rentals are out there on the market right now. So we have 126 of them that people are out there either knowing that they're illegal and having a short-term rental anyway, or maybe not be familiar enough with city's ordinances to know whether or not they're legal. But there's about 126 of them right now, or in January of this year. A couple other data points that they shared with us from their research: the median nightly rate is $80. 65% of the listing types were single family residences, and 14% were listed in multifamily, and then there was another 20% that was unknown. As far as the unit types, 68% of them were shown to be the entire home was listed for rent, or 30% was a portion of their home was being rented. We also, in December, held a citizen survey to gauge feedback from our residents as to their thoughts on short-term rentals. And we had the survey open from December 10th through December 30th of 2020. We had 12 questions and we received 600 responses. Now, I do want to let the council know that this isn't a scientific survey. We put the survey out there publicly through social media, through the mayor's newsletter. And so we don't really have a way to gauge exactly who responded to this. So they may be Midvale residents, they may be residents that live in Iowa, but it was sent directly to our residents. And so I just want to put in context the information that we received. We can't verify for sure. It's not a scientific survey. I'm going to have Zach Smallwood is here with us. He's taken the lead as far as planning and zoning on doing research and looking at what other communities are doing with short-term rentals. I'm going to have him run through the survey results, and then we'll kind of talk about some pros and cons, some possible next steps. So let me turn the time over to him, and we'll just breeze through these. Again, we wanted to go through these pretty quickly so that we could leave room for some discussion from you.
Awesome. Thanks, Melinda. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me kind of present to you today. So yeah, we're just going to go over these real quickly. Sorry, I can't see. We'll put it on this side. Okay. So looking at question number 1, this was to help us kind of guide exactly, who we're talking to, or at least who we expected that we were talking to. And 87%, or 536, said that they were Murray residents. We asked if you were a business owner or if you were a non-business owner, non-resident, things like that. Second question, this was to kind of hopefully gauge some of the responses a little bit, inform us a little bit better of who we were seeing respond. It asked, townhouse, single family dwelling, apartment, or mobile / manufactured home, what kind of dwelling you lived in, and largely single family dwelling, or what people were living in at that time. Question 3 is if they knew of any short-term rentals. This helps us just get an understanding if they've had experience with them in their own neighborhood. We were a little surprised that 25% actually did know of some in their neighborhood. I thought that was kind of interesting. And all these first few questions were really trying to get to know who the respondent was so that we had a better understanding when we actually start to get into the meat of the survey, which was to look at, how whether they should be allowed or not. And that's what this question number, I apologize, I can't see that one. Question number 4, if they should be allowed. So this allowed to select multiple answers if you wanted to. So you could hit single family townhomes and condominiums, or what I did, I verified with this as well. You can see the top one here is none of the above, short-term rentals should not be allowed. We wanted to kind of gauge that a little bit further, so I went through all the responses of that, and if they had selected that, they didn't select any other option. So about 41% of the respondents said none of the above, short-term rentals shouldn't be allowed. About 58% came out and selected at least one or multiple of the remaining options. Going down here, question number 5, should short-term rentals be allowed only if they're owner-occupied? It was pretty the same all across the board. We included another neither, short-term rentals should not be allowed. 33% said that. And then it was, 33, almost 33% across the board on that one. Should Murray City limit the maximum number of nights per year a dwelling may be rented as a short-term rental? Majority said yes, and that is something that is pretty common across other municipalities that do allow them. This question, should short-term rentals be allowed, but the city should require a permit? As you can see, about 40% or so said, disagree or strongly disagree, and about the same, strongly agree and agree. So it is kind of a wash there. We're getting kind of both here. So this one's a little more interesting. So this is a rank order question. So we asked the respondents to rank what was most important and what was least important. So here on this table, you can see, so the total score out of 10, you can see that Party House was the number one issue across all this 1 through 7. They rank that through the survey software we used. And then the next one was noise, following with crime, and then parking. And then the second column there, I decided to put this in. So this was the highest number of responses for the question. So, 1 being most important, 7 being the least. So as you can see, noise, the most number of people selected 2 on that one. Party House and crime were selected as number 1. That was their highest responses. But for some reason, crime, there were less number 2s and 3s on that. So it reduced, it made it a little bit lower than noise. Let's see, moving on. Having a contact 24 hours a day, if that would help ease some of their ease the concerns. About 55% said yes, 45 said no. So that's good data to have. Again, this is now looking at when this is helping us to inform us when we're looking at code, when we're actually drafting code, what's important to residents when we're looking at that. You can see a lot of people are concerned with off-street parking, noise, and the number of renters allowed at a time, and then also requiring a permit. So those are things that we've looked at going forward as well since that time. This was overwhelmingly, if we receive a certain number of complaints, valid code complaints, should their a rental unit not be allowed to operate anymore. Overwhelmingly, 84% said yes. All right, and then there was a 12th question that just kind of asked what other concerns you have, and I didn't have a good way to filter through 600 comments, or I think there were 300 and something comments, so couldn't filter through all those quite in time. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Melinda so she can kind of talk about next steps. And feel free to ask questions too if there's anything that you need answered.
Yeah. And you did receive all of the survey results and all of those comments in your packet. So if you do want to read through all of them, which I think actually, I know Zach has, I think I did, although it's been quite a while. So, but if you do want to read through all of those, you did receive those in your packet. So one of the things then, based on the survey information that we received, we wanted to talk about which topics, if we were to move forward with an ordinance, which topics would we want to address? And based again off of the survey information, as well as conversations we've had with other communities and looking at code that other communities have, we wanted to talk about parking, owner occupancy, the number of nights short-term rental is allowed to be available for rent, and then the host responsiveness to any complaints. Wanted to talk just real quickly about short-term rental pros and cons. one of the difficulties about the situation that we have right now, as I mentioned, we do have short-term rentals that are out there in the community. They're not permitted, they're not licensed. We don't have a good way to know what's going on. We only go and respond to those rentals based on code enforcement complaints. So right now we don't have a way to track and monitor those. If we put an ordinance in place and licensed individuals, we would be able to have that information. Those that would get licensed, we would have that information available to us. Another pro is that it provides a path for people who want to have a home listed on the market. It allows them to do it. Right now, people are doing it, they're just doing it illegally. So this would provide a legal path for them to do it. I think one of the biggest reasons and justifications for doing this is because it can generate income for individuals who may not be able to afford to stay in a home. This gives some extra income that they can utilize to augment a mortgage payment. We would also likely see an increase in some of the transient room taxes that we receive. I wouldn't anticipate it would be a large increase, but we would see some increase in that. There are some cons to doing this. It reduces the housing stock. Right now, we know there's about 126, again, that are doing this illegally. They may be offering those year round. That right there is 126 homes that are off the market in Murray. And this providing a path for people to do it legally, we probably would see more people come in and get licenses, and that would further reduce the housing stock. I think that there is a really good argument against short-term rentals in that it does impact the affordability of housing. A lot of that goes back to supply and demand, but if you talk to any community anywhere that has a broad tourism base, they will tell you affordable housing an issue, and that is a large player in due to the short-term rentals. I lived in Moab for 2 years. Short-term rentals are a huge thing there. They're a huge thing in Park City. And I think that in general, it is an affordable housing issue when you take that many houses out of the market. So there also is an impact to the community cohesion. I think based on the concerns that you saw listed with the survey responses, and if you do take the time to read through those comments, people have a lot of concern about, I don't want strangers coming in and staying next door to me. I don't want people that I don't know in my neighborhood that I'm not familiar with. That comes down to your comments about crime and those types of things. And then there has been, in the past, a lot of dialogue about how short-term rentals are unfair to your regular lodging industry, which traditionally has been hotels and motels. Now, that can be, I think, a little bit compensated and over the years, as short-term rentals has evolved, they have had to start paying transient room taxes as well. Whereas initially, when these first came on, that was not something that was required.
Melinda?
Yeah.
Could we go back to reduces affordable housing? I'm kind of confused about how that happens.
Well, that's a good question, and I think it's twofold. And I think the primary reason why it contributes to affordable housing issues is that it takes supply out of the market. So I can make more money renting my home to weekend travelers than I can to a family who wants to come and sign a 1-year lease and be a part of a community. And so a lot of these homes are being taken off of the market and used for the short-term rentals instead of being a rental opportunity for someone who would integrate into the community that may have children going to school there. And it just reduces the stock of the the supply, and that then increases or causes a shortage, which then inflates prices.
But of affordable housing, I'm just confused about the affordable piece. I mean, I can see it may reduce housing stock, and I get the impact to community cohesion. I just don't get the affordable piece.
Yeah, anytime you reduce the housing stock, it's going to create an inflation in demand, which then creates an inflation in your prices that you're willing to pay for rent. So if it's kind of like a bidding war, right? If you can make more money renting your night out, your home out nightly versus a 1-year lease, and everybody on the street chooses to do that except for one family, then you take, I mean, let's say you have 10 homes on a street, 9 of them choose to do overnight rentals, and they were all in the rental market before, and you only have 1 of 10 that's left, then you only have 1 unit left for 10 families. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
No, and I think she is explaining that well, but I'll just give an example from our slides. The data that we got from Granicus was showing that, on average, the nightly rental was about $80 per night. You times that by 30 nights, assuming they get every night sold, that's $2,400. So that's more than you would get typically for, I apologize, I don't know what rents are going for right now, but I think they're in about $1,800 range.
Yeah.
And so that is then pricing people. It's more lucrative for a property owner to go and sell that nightly than it is to do it to a person looking to rent a house.
Yeah.
So it's kind of market driven.
Yeah.
kind of.
So it reduces the supply,
Right.
but it also inflates the prices because let's say, average rents in Murray, let's say for a 2,000 square foot home are $1,800. But if my neighbor's renting theirs out for $2,400 a month at $80 a night, well, I'm going to increase my rent to $2,200, but still keep it a long-term rental, but make more money.
Okay, thank you.
It also has to do with scale, though, doesn't it? I mean, that's why it's such an issue in Moab and Park City, because of the scale, the amount of short-term rentals, where you see that compared to maybe the amount that we are aware of or here, where if someone's only renting it out on weekends while they go stay at their parents or something like that, like they wouldn't be renting it all year long anyway. And not to say that's the case for all of them, but I think scale makes a big difference.
Yeah, and we have about 2,200 housing units, single family housing units in Murray. I tried to pull up the stats and the GIS layer wasn't working, but we've got about 2,200 units in Murray, and if 126 of those are in the short-term rental market, that's 5-8% that are taken out of the market. And so it's not a huge problem, but I think across the board, across the state, it is something that contributes to the lack of affordable housing. And so maybe somebody has to live in Murray because they can't afford to live in Park City, but they work at the ski resort. And so, it does bleed over into different boundaries, but it is definitely something that, depending on the scale, is more of a challenge for some communities than others.
Okay, thank you.
Before we move on, I must say I'm not a big fan of Airbnbs, but I think part of what would help this is owner occupation, because if we go forward with this and we have owner occupied, that gets us away from a property manager that's in Timbuktu that could care less. We already have them in the city. How do we need to regulate it somehow, because it's not fair for John to have one and make money and Pete over here gets caught and he has to shut down while John's still working. We have to find a way, if we're going to do it, we have to find a way to do it equitably. And with, I can't talk hard enough about how it should be owner occupied and not be able to pawn it off on rent it for 6 months at $80 a night and pawn it off on a management company that doesn't have any roots or care what happens in Murray as long as they get their commission.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think that was evident with the information that we gathered from the data. So real quick, let me just go through this last slide, which is just additional things that we want to consider moving forward. So, and let me go back to them just real quickly as well. The ordinance topics that we would want to address moving forward would be parking, owner occupancy, the number of nights that the rental would be available, which actually has a direct relation to the owner occupancy, but host responsiveness. So we tried to anticipate some of the questions that you would ask us as far as like, well, if we do pass an ordinance, what does that mean for you as staff? And so there's 3 items here to consider going forward. One, it would be we would have applications to process, and hopefully those 126 that are out there would come forward and get their permit through planning and zoning, and then they would need a business license. So we would have to we'd have to obviously finish drafting the ordinance. We'd have to get application materials in place, and then we would have to process potential applications and business licenses. Enforcement would be a challenge for us, and I think if we were to move forward with allowing short-term rentals, we would need to look at one of the companies that comes in and assists with compliance. And we would do that, essentially pass the cost off to those who have the short-term rental and include that cost of the enforcement contracting in the cost of what a business license would be. So it wouldn't necessarily be any additional expense to the taxpayers. We would include that as a business license fee. And then another thing to consider too is some of the many conversations that have gone up at the state capitol over the years. And there's been more discussions recently about the state trying to pass some legislation. So this is something that we could just, as a community, choose to say, we're going to wait and hold off and see what the legislature does over the course of the next year.
Melinda?
Yeah.
What have you heard talk? I mean, we've all heard talk, but have you heard talk that they would do this during a special session? Would it be next year? What's the talk up there?
So I think it would be done. I don't think it would be done during a special session. It would be something that we'd start hearing rumblings towards the end of the interims, probably something in the fall as to what they were wanting to do. But there was several years ago legislation that was passed that really tied our hands as to what we could do with enforcement. And so we can't proactively go out and do code enforcement against individuals who are illegally renting out their property. We really have to wait until a code complaint comes to us. That does happen. We have, a couple a year. Sometimes we'll get 4 or 5 a year, but we do get them. I think one thing that is worth mentioning is that as the industry of short-term rentals has evolved over the past several years, I think these companies have done a better job of their own enforcement, meaning they don't want to have problems with a community where they have renters because they make money off of that. And so if they have people who are renting out homes short-term and they are a problem or they're not maintaining their property, they'll essentially stop allowing them to market their home on their website. And so the market has gotten smarter over the last decade or so when these really first became a big thing, but also they've gotten bigger and they've been able to do lobbying that has prevented communities from doing a lot of enforcement, like the code that they passed here in Utah. So, so we are more than happy to move forward with drafting an ordinance and bringing back something for the council to consider if that's what you would like to do. We really at this point would want to just kind of have some time for you to have a dialogue and give us your thoughts on where we should go next.
Okay, I think we've had some dialogue, so you need some direction from us. Is that whether to continue? Okay, council, what are your thoughts?
Diane?
Yes. Yes, Brett.
I'll tell you, there's so much to this. I know that we've had a talk about it, but this, honestly, this is the most that I've been involved with it. I would love to see, what do we call it, Diane? I can't think of the word, but where we, not a retreat, but where we get together and go over this with Melinda
A work
and her
session?
group and really go over it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. A work session and really find out what the, because right now, like Melinda said, if there's no ordinance, then you can't look it up if they're advertising correct, Melinda. You can't, there's no going after anybody if they're doing this right now by looking up online. That's illegal. The legislators have said that we cannot do that. And is that correct, Melinda?
Essentially it is, yes. And then out of that, basically some of these third-party host compliance companies have come forward, and they actually have a partnership with Airbnb or VRBO where they have access on the back end to the information of people listing their sites. And through that, then we could go and they would do the majority of the enforcement for us. There would come a point in time where that would have to be kicked back over to us because there are things that they cannot do because they don't have the authority that a municipality would. But yeah, essentially, Councilmember Hales, you're correct. We are very limited on any enforcement that we can do proactively because of the state laws that have been passed in, I don't know, I think that one was passed maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
So, Melinda, is this time sensitive?
It's not.
Okay.
So this is, I mean, we have worked on a draft internally, and I think we have a pretty good gauge on several things that we still would need to work out if that's something that we would need to move forward with. But this really is something that it's up to the council, whatever your prerogative is. If you want us to move forward with doing something, we're happy to do that. If you want us to just put it off to the
I don't think we should put it off. I mean, I think it's an issue that's going to keep coming back. So,
And to that,
I have a question.
Go ahead, Rosalba.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Cap.
Oh, I was just going to say, to speak to Brett's suggestion of a workshop, I'm never opposed to studying something more deeply and making sure we do something right. And it's not a rush, but we do have residents who are in this gray area and have been for years, just treading water in this. They know I'm here, so I can't do my short-term rental, but everybody else is. And so to what Dale mentioned about the fairness of it, of trying to find a way to be mindful of the concerns of the off-street parking. And I thought the 4 points you had were good ones. They were prioritized well. I didn't really understand how we would measure how the host responds objectively, but I thought they were all very on point with, I read the 300 plus public comments.
yeah, me too.
Right. But I do think we should be thoughtful to those that are rule followers out there who are, wanting to and needing to have extra income to make their mortgage. And this is the way they had done it previously and could do it moving forward, like other people in the city actively doing that. So I would just like to be thoughtful about not going too slowly in the process, but being mindful of the things the other council members mentioned.
Rosalba?
I'm just curious, how many cities in the county are looking at this? I mean, I know we're one of them, and how many have been successful at changing code or updating their code to allow short-term housing? Because it's not going to go away. I mean, the reality is it's not going away. People are already doing it illegally. So how do we manage the true expectation, and how have other cities done it successfully? Or have there been success stories?
GL, do you have any sense of that?
I think it depends on how you define success, honestly. We've looked.
I mean, in this context, for me, it would be success with the people who are looking to rent, right? To have that extra income, and success of the neighborhood and being conscious of that. So finding a middle ground is success.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, this is an issue in some communities more so than it is in others. And I think there's a lot of communities that, because of how big of an issue it's been, they've been forced to address it sooner than we have. Sandy passed an ordinance a year, 2 years ago. They've created districts across their city where you can only have so many rentals in that particular district. And I think that gets really complicated. I don't think that's something we would choose to do here in Murray. I think we would look at doing something that would require owner occupancy, something that would be available in single family residential units. We'd have to, we could allow it in other types of units, but that I think gets a little bit trickier. But I think to answer your question, Councilmember Dominguez, I think this is something that most communities have an issue with. Some communities have a good handle on it, and other communities are still grappling, trying to figure out what to do. And I think the communities that have a good handle on it are the ones that have probably moved forward, allowing them, but also partnering with the entities to try and have the enforcement element be something that is constructive and doable.
Okay, we need to continue on. Otherwise, you're not going to have any time for your report, Melinda. So I'm wondering, what if you worked on an ordinance and then brought it to a work session? I'm trying to combine the two so we can get it done fairly quickly. How long do you think that would take?
Well, we do have, I think, a decent draft going, and we can take the next kind of 4 or 8 weeks to maybe get that refined and get it back on discussion for committee of the whole, and maybe try and do a little longer discussion, or we can try and do a workshop too. But
yeah, Brett, what do you think?
I'm totally good with it going to another committee of the whole. So we're not, like Kat said, we're not lengthening it out. But I really like what Rosalba said about the neighborhood. That is huge, huge, huge. That's who we represent. We represent our citizens. And so enforcement, every time we ever hear of anything, and I'm not saying I'm against this, I'm just saying enforcement is huge, because every time we ever do anything, it seems like that's the biggest thing is enforcement.
Well, the two things I'd like to see in that is like I said, owner occupying. And I think to Kat's question, I think the way you gauge owner response to complaints is you put a number on verified complaints that weren't dealt with, and then the stick is you lose your business license, and you lose your ability to do that. Then people hopefully, and most people are responsible anyway, but we'll get away from these weekend parties, and there'll be more of an Airbnb where somebody flies into town and stays at the Airbnb and goes to Alda or goes, places like that. And they're there in the evening, but they're not. What I worry about is the party houses. Let's go trash somebody else's house instead of ours in somebody else's neighborhood. So with those two things, and then I'd like to hear a lot more about the organization that you're talking about that would enforce it and how that would be done.
Yeah. So shall we then perhaps
Last
revisit
date-
it in
oh.
June?
Yeah, we can look at a date in June.
Okay.
Really quick, can I just also,
Sure,
I would
Rosalba.
like to see, and this is just my last comment on this, but I would like to see how, because the hospital also plays a huge role in this, right? For their residents to come and practice at IHC. So somehow I know that that's probably where it's driving, and maybe we just think about that in terms of like the owner occupancy, and also how many complaints are we really getting? You know, is it all parties all the time? I don't really know. I would like to see how that data and how code enforcement has already been called. I would like to see that kind of information a little bit more in detail as well.
Okay. Well, we'll look at a good date in
Thank you.
June. I'm going to maybe say even July, depending on where we're falling out with the mixed use zones, because I know we kind of were wanting to get. Well, no, that's Planning Commission in June. So we can look at June, and
Maybe the end of June.
yeah, and I've got some notes then on information to bring back to you, and we can also at that time we'll make sure we provided kind of the matrix, the comparison of what some of the other cities in
Oh,
the
that'd
Sully
be
County
great.
are doing.
That'd be helpful. Okay. All right. Is everyone okay with that? Does that work? Brett, Rosalba,
Yes, thank
are
you.
you guys good with
Yes,
that?
thank you.
Sure. Okay, Melinda. The next one is yours as well. Your community and economic development report.
Well, thank you for inviting me to give a report about my department. And I thought with this first one that I've done with the quarterly reports, I'll just start with some basic information about my department and some of our statistics, our annual statistics that we put together, share that with you. If going forward you'd like to see additional information or anything else, just let me know. And of course, if you have questions, also just feel free to ask. So wanted to talk real quickly about business licensing. I'm sure, especially given the past year that we've had, this would be a question that many of you would have about how have our businesses been doing? How have they been impacted by COVID? And looking at this, it does show that there's quite a few less businesses that have been licensed over the last year than we did the years before. However, about a year ago, we made changes to the business licensing Title V. And you may recall that we removed the requirement for exempt home occupations to get licensed. So this decline in the business licensing really is more due to that than any of the issues we've seen with the pandemic. So I would expect actually now that we have been through a full year of cycling those non-exempt or those exempt business licenses, and those are now, we won't be including those in numbers going forward. I would expect that two things. One, we'll see this number normalize over the next several years. And two, I think from this point forward is where we would start seeing a decline in business license renewals because of the pandemic. So just with this, I would not read into that at all, other than the fact that we eliminated the home occupations, which are exempt by state code. We did have a difference in between 2019 and 2020 new licenses that were processed, and we did receive fewer licenses, new business licenses last year, which I think that is something that we would expect with the year that we had. Code enforcement, real quick. Code enforcement does, we have essentially one individual assigned to code enforcement, and he does, our zoning code enforcement, those are the complaints that come in. If people have debris in their yard, or if there is a setback that's not being dealt with properly with a building, or anything like that. He also does business license reviews, and that is for business licenses that have a conditional use permit associated with their license renewal. He'll go out and verify that everything that they are required to do as part of a condition of having their business license is in place. And then he'll do final site inspections. So that would be when we give a zoning approval, before we would move forward with issuing a business license, he'll go and make sure that all of the conditions of the zoning approval were in place. So on average, he works with about 1,200 cases per year. A lot of these are pretty simple. Some of them get a little bit more complex, but this just kind of shows that we're pretty steady with the number of code enforcement cases that we have. I showed some of this information to you in January, but thought I would just hit again with the 2020 numbers of residential units that were approved, or actually this shows a history from 2016 moving forward. So we had a total of 527 units approved. We had some of those the last year, 376 of those were multifamily. That's really your Murray Square, the Kmart site. We had single family units that were also approved last year, and then we had 7 accessory dwellings that were approved as well. This is a 5-year history. Look at our permit fees that have been collected. And I will say that I've looked at our data for this year, and we are down quite a bit in our permit fees based on previous years. These are kind of difficult, I think, to anticipate, because you could have one huge project that comes in that generates a lot of fees and puts you over where over the course of the year prior to that, they were just smaller projects. So we've been pretty steady here again with our permit fees that have been collected. And then this shows just a little bit of comparison between 2019 and 2020 with the building permits that were issued. We did see a decline in the commercial permits, and conversely, we saw an increase in residential permits. And so a lot of people, I think because they were working from home, a lot of people did some home improvement projects. We had a lot of pools last year that were applied for with the residential building permits. So I think things are normalizing now. We're getting back to kind of that pre-pandemic. And so I think through the course of the remainder of this year, these numbers will, I think, kind of equal out. I went through last Wednesday with the school district several development projects that are going on in the community. I wanted to hit some of those again real quickly, but there was one in particular that I did not discuss last week that I want to just let the council be aware of. So this is the UEA building. This is Security National. We talked about that over on 53rd. And then this is the Vine. And I apologize because I put the wrong photo on there. That's the back side of the Vine. I should have put the front side. But this is what'll be going in over there on Vine Street. This was the project I did not mention last week, mostly just because I was trying to keep it brief. And this is a project that it won't generate any property taxes because it is IMC, but it is a great asset that will be in our community, something that we're looking forward to having. So the Tosh Ambulatory Surgical Center is, it got its zoning approvals, I think about 3 or 4 months ago now, and it's going to be 44,000 square feet of new building and a recovery space for those outpatient surgeries. some of the development projects that we've had going on in the community. Town Place Suites is now open. Mr. Galt mentioned that with his, it looks like they've chosen to join the chamber, which is great news. Abington Assisted Living, again, this is down at 53rd and State Street. They are nearly complete. They should probably get their final inspection passed off within the next week or two. This is something you may not be aware of, but the Baymont Hotel that is over on 4500 South, just north of the Denny's there. They are doing a complete renovation of their hotel, and they're moving from hotel to kind of an extended stay type of a model. And then Murray Square, this is the Kimball development up on 9th East with, we call it the old Kmart site. I wonder how many years or decades we will continue to call it that. But they, I think, actually have their first building permit has been issued, and their second one is nearly ready to be issued. And then just a few of the single family projects that were approved last year are now out in the community. Spring Creek Cove, there's 15 lots there. The grading and infrastructure work is happening right now. Mash Farm Estates, there's 10 lots. Those lots are for sale. And then the Meadows of Murray is 26 townhomes, and those are under construction right now. So that's what I had prepared for you. I don't know if you have any questions for me, if there's any other topics that you would like for me to cover. I'm happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions from the council? Anything else you would like to have reported on as well from Melinda? I guess not.
And I should add that we will be coming back to you probably in about 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, with an update on the TLUR, the mixed use zones. We're still working away on that, keeping quite busy with all of that. And so I didn't want to address any of that because we'll be bringing more specifics back to you. I don't know if it's in.
Good. That was going to be my question.
Yeah. I don't know if it's 2 more meetings or 3 more meetings, but we'll be back in front of you with some concepts and some more refined ordinance language for you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. Okay. I appreciate your speedy delivery. That was good. All right. Our last discussion item, number 7, which is a discussion on a resolution authorizing the execution of an interlocal cooperation agreement between Murray City and Salt Lake County for the sharing of election services for the city's 2021 municipal election. Brooke, are you here?
Yes,
okay.
I am. Thank you, Council. I would just really quick and briefly, this is a resolution that will allow our city to enter into a contract with Salt Lake County Elections Division to conduct our 2021 municipal elections. This year we have the mayor, city council, District 2 and District 4 up for election. And in the past, the city has contracted with the county for the past 22 plus years to help us conduct those election processes. We do this because the county has all the equipment needed. They also take care of the hiring of election workers, setting up poll locations, printing our ballots, machine program and software, and delivering supplies and services needed to conduct the election. The county can conduct a traditional vote or a primary and general election like we've done in the past, or they can conduct an instant runoff ranked choice voting pilot program, depending on what the city decides to do. If we decide to do a traditional vote, the not to exceed amount will be about $57,888. Got it that time. This is about $14,000 more than the previous year. And then if we decide to do a general election or instant runoff vote with the ranked choice voting, there is a $10,000 fee that will be divided between all the cities that decide to do ranked choice voting. So the fee that they quoted us is an estimate. And if we do a general and a primary election, the fee will be slightly higher than the traditional vote. That fee will be $58,198. And then we can also choose to do just a general election, and that fee will be $35,042. Again, there'll be an additional cheap fee for that $10,000 licensing fee. But I estimate if we just do the general ranked choice voting, it will be about $35,000 to $40,000. With that in mind, I'm wondering if the council has any questions for me, or if not, I ask that they approve the resolution so we can enter into agreement for the county to conduct our elections process this year.
Did you mean to say 3,500 or is that 35,000?
Sorry, 35,000.
Okay, I'm confused. So it's 10,000 and then another 35,000 or 3,500.
Okay, so if we just do a general, it will be 35,000 plus an additional 10,000 that will be divided between all the municipalities that do ranked choice voting. So I know there's a couple of cities that are considering it. So it will probably be about $3,000 or $4,000 more than the $35,000 mark. It'll be between $35,000 and $40,000.
Okay, and that's how much it costs anyways, right?
If we just do a traditional vote, it will be $57,000. So if we do the ranked choice voting, it will be about $18,000 less.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Brooke?
I just had one short question, and that is with the 10,000 annual licensing fee for the ranked choice voting, is that divided up per city equally, or is it by population?
Per city equally.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if there's 3 cities that do it, we'll get a third of that $10,000 fee.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else for Brooke? All right. Thank you very much, Brooke, and we'll see you in a little while.